Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. J.K. Rowling and the Curse of the Prequel. That would be a brilliant title for a documentary, wouldn't it? Why don't Hollywood ever learn their lesson? You would have thought after the Star Wars prequels, they would have learned their lesson. I always said, and I never understood after I saw The Return of the Jedi, why Lucas just didn't continue from there. Why did he go and do the prequels and try and tell that story? He couldn't. You can't do it. You couldn't fulfill fan expectation. And I'm not a prequel hater. I actually love the Star Wars prequels. But the reality is, after the critics and the fans got finished with it, it muddied the waters. And we've got the same situation here with the Harry Potter prequels. Now, you can't blame Warner Brothers. You've got to look at J.K. Rowling here. She made an interesting decision where she wanted to go back and tell the story of Newt Scamander, right? And that's interesting, and I love Fantastic Beasts, and I enjoyed Fantastic Beasts too, but it was more logical and more fun and more interesting to continue the adventures of Harry Potter. Yes, he's dealt with Voldemort. Now you deal with these people in their adults' lives, away from Hogwarts, or still involved maybe as, magical teachers or whatever you want to do. You continue the adventures of Harry Potter. You don't go back. People love Harry Potter. People wanted to continue to see the adventures of Harry Potter. So I don't understand what made her think that this was going to work. Also, you've got idiots like Grace Randolph accusing her of not being good enough as a screenwriter. Personally, I don't agree with that. After seeing both these films, I think she's done a marvellous job. But you can even see within the box office for both these films that they would have made more money by continuing the adventures. She's also been very stubborn about not doing a Cursed Child movie, right? And it's such a popular play. Do it. Continue it from there. Do what you want to do after the last Harry Potter adventure and continue it there on in. There is nothing to be made from these prequels. Yes, they'll make some money, but I just feel it would have been a lot more interesting to continue the adventures of Harry Potter. And I think this is where she's made the mistake, and this is where she's got herself in a bit of a muddle with this second movie as well. There's the controversy over McGonagall, whether she would have been around at that time. Now, she knows what she's doing. She knows the maths. There's a reason for it. I get it. And I ain't triggered by it. I don't care. It was great to see a younger McGonagall, right? The second film is a really good film. And the twist is magnificent, because now you're asking yourself, is Grindelwald, I keep on forgetting that it's actually Grindelwald and not Grindelwald, telling the truth? But the point is, and I love the fact that Grindelwald knows about the Second World War. That's a fantastic twist. That's a fantastic character development in the second film. It's all great. But again, prequels are cursed. They do not work. Let me tell you why prequels do not work. They don't work because you can't go back on yourself and do as good of a job for the audience as you did with the present day story. The only prequel live action story that works is Smallville, and it works because they never had a present day version of that universe. So it's literally, I've said it on another video, I think, Smallville is the classic Elseworld story that lasts for a decade, and it's fantastic. But apart from that, tell me a prequel story, and I'm sure you lot are going to start embarrassing me and saying, what about this and what about that? But I can't think of one that's been successful. It doesn't work. Even when you look at The Lord of the Rings, what they did with The Hobbit and all of that, it was good, but it was no Lord of the Rings. But, Peter Jackson was probably better off if there was no more stories left, and I'm not sure, because I don't know about the books and all of that. I only know about the movies. He was better off doing some original stories, continuing the adventures of Frodo, maybe. I would have enjoyed that a lot more, rather than going back and telling that prequel story. It doesn't work. It's not as interesting. It's not as exciting. And this is why I think J.K. Rowling now has got a lot of problems. Because once you get negativity about one film, we've seen it in the DCEU, which I love, by the way, but once people didn't particularly warm to Man of Steel, and I'm talking about the mainstream, then there's negativity for Batman versus Superman, then Suicide Squad. And this is the problem. Once you muddy the waters, it's very difficult to clean them. And this is why I think prequels just don't work. Literally, you're giving yourself a challenge. Now, J.K. Rowling's a big girl, and she can take care of herself. If she was able to bring up her children as a single parent or child or whatever it was, in poverty and not have much money, and raise herself to create the Harry Potter franchise, and then sell it to Warner Brothers, but get a big company like Warner Brothers to let her control the franchise, which she's been doing from the first film. Warner Brothers don't allow anyone to control what they're doing, but she's got seniority on this franchise. She's the one who made the decision about prequels and not continuing the adventures. I suspect Warner Brothers wanted her to continue the adventures of Harry Potter. It was obvious that she didn't want that. Now, again, I love what she's done, but I just think, going forward rather than back is a much better idea as a storyteller. But I think one of the problems these days, I think that writers and creators are too self-absorbed and self-indulgent, and they don't think of the audience. And you've got to think of the audience. Do you want to make money? Then you put your customer first. You put your audience first. You put your consumer first. And if you're not going to do that, you get yourself in a lot of trouble, as she has here. Because I believe if this film had a positive reaction from the critics, it would have made more money. But the biggest thing that makes money these days is rewatches. I'm sure a lot of people will go back and watch it. I will for sure. But the reality is here that prequels don't work for me. And there's so many lessons to be learned out of not doing that. Don't do it. Do not go back on yourself, because in the end, this is what happens. And now she's in a situation where she's got to fend off lots of criticism. And also what happens is when you're fending off criticism as a creative, while you're writing the piece, you've got that criticism in your head and you're trying to correct your mistakes. And the audience can see you're trying to correct your mistakes. And what happens then is you make even more mistakes in trying to correct the mistakes you've already made. It's a domino effect. Once you try and move one of the dominoes, they all fall down. And that, my friends, is why prequels don't work.